recording here. Okay, I'm showing it's 12:01, so let's go ahead and get started. I know we have a limited amount of time with each other here today, and so welcome everyone to the Hawaii Aquaculture Tech and Research Brown Bag, sponsored by NELHA and the Hawaii Aquaculture Collaborative, which is facilitated by the University of Hawaii Sea Grant College program. I'm Jean Schneider, representing the Sea Grant team, and Ray Nguyen is our co-host at NELHA. Our usual housekeeping: the recording of today's session and slides will be posted on our website, hiaquacollab.org. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and use the hand raising feature, or just jump in to ask questions to make comments during our discussion. A few announcements before we get started. So Windward Community College has a new course on limu. Introduction to Algae is its name. It's a free course that runs from August 21st through December 15th. It's online and asynchronous, which means students can view lessons and complete weekly assignments within that week on their own time. And for those of you who are thinking that this would be great for your employees, as a retention strategy, and professional development strategy, you may consider allotting some work time for them to take this course. Deadline to register is August 1st, and contact Jolie Dollar at WCC for more info. Please join us for the Thrive Hawaii Agri-Food Summit on September 26th and 27th. The 27th will be devoted to tech advances in aquaculture and local IA and Hawaii aquaculture strategic planning. There are a limited number of discounted registrations and neighbor island travel subsidies. So you can see this on our website as well as the Thrive website. So we do hope that you can join us. And I see Jim is here. Jim, do you have a little update on the conference or want to say anything?
No, we're looking forward to everyone in the aquaculture community in Hawaii showing up for this thing. There's going to be some fantastic speakers, and we'll have a panel discussion about developing a strategy for Hawaii aquaculture. That should be very interesting, and I hope everyone can join in on that and contribute your ideas to strategic planning for Hawaii aquaculture. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. And let's see, at last month's meeting, we had a good discussion on aquaculture priority topics. We've reached out to our industry subject matter experts and are in the process of summarizing their responses to these questions, which we'll get out to you this month. And for August, we're looking forward to collaborating with Chair Sharon Hurd and the Hawaii State Department of Agriculture to discuss how HDOA and industry can collaborate to strengthen and grow aquaculture in Hawaii. So be on the lookout for that meeting announcement and invitation. And now for our main event, we'd like to welcome Todd Lowe, the Aquaculture and Livestock Support Services Manager at HDOA. He's here to discuss HDOA's restorative aquaculture plan. So aloha and welcome, Todd.
Great, thanks, Jean. Hello, everyone. Gee, I should have had Sharon go first on her talk, but we will just plow ahead here. Let's see, next slide. So I am the manager of the Aquaculture and Livestock Support Services branch, and we have been tasked with aquaculture development. I know most of you or some of you out there in the audience, and hope to meet others if I haven't met you yet. And what I wanted to do was kind of follow up on the last presentation, I guess, by Wally Ito on seaweed, and let people know what we are working on now in our purview. So just to set a baseline, restorative aquaculture, you can read it here, I won't read it to you. Basically, it's if conservation and aquaculture got together and had a baby, and there is both the aquaculture aspects to it and conservation aspects. So the ecological restoration principles will be underlined and with the foundation of aquaculture. So next slide. This is a little diagram I did up that shows the different components, at least in my head. So this is really set up around the idea of sustainability, as you can see. On the left side, economic sustainability really comes from the aquaculture side of the house. And there has to be value for what we do. Typically, it's been, and we can talk about this a little later, the trying to value ecosystem services or conservation is something that people are working on now. But basically, aquaculture, agriculture really is focused on profit or business and selling products for money. So that is one of the aspects that's going to have to play through with the restorative aquaculture side of things. In the center of the picture, it's more, this is dealing with the environmental sustainability of it. At the top, again, working with the aquaculture. Hello? Nope. Okay. Working with the science-based side of the thing so we can know what we're doing and how to measure it. You see the little diagram for the microscope. And we're looking at things like acidification mitigation in the water, carbon sequestration, nutrient removal, and water quality improvement. And going down, really looking at using best aquaculture, best management practices for the hatcheries production of the limu and oysters. So I skipped this a little. I'm really looking at the use of macroalgae or seaweed and bivalves, which are oysters, for their ecosystem services. And the reason we are doing that is because I believe there's a huge opportunity to expand aquaculture working in conjunction with the conservation side of the house versus somewhat adversarial if we've been trying to do just focusing on food. I believe also if we move ahead with this, it will lift all boats in aquaculture and provide more social license and or community support for the industry in general, which leads us to the third box or number 3 box on the right, and the integration of macroalgae and oysters into coastal resilience and restoration initiatives, things that we haven't necessarily focused on. I know that Maria Haas, who's on the call, I think, had done some work with the water keepers at the Pearl Harbor. That's just one example of things that we can do if things get aligned. Next slide. Okay, so what we did in 2022 was basically wanted to set the foundation and do kind of a report on restorative aquaculture. And next slide. What came out of it was the 2022 Hawaii's Ocean Opportunity. I'm not sure if everyone has seen this, but it was working with a group out of NELHA, which is Hatch. I'm sure you guys are aware they're an accelerator. And you can see what the topic was. And you can also see the URL where if you don't have it, you can download it. And it really looked at what we should do as an industry to help grow the restorative aquaculture side of things around the seaweed and bivalves. Next slide. And what I've been doing and in taking that report and the suggestions of it and trying to implement things as we move forward. We're really looking at doing foundational things that can help a lot. It's not necessarily a company specific or a segment specific, but foundational research and or tactics that we can lift the industry up as a whole. And that's the topic. So next slide. Okay, so one of the ideas was to develop a streamlined licensing and permitting process for restorative aquaculture. Currently, I believe people were on the call that we have a group out of Colorado, Epics Analytics, who's doing the work for us. And it's a risk assessment for restorative aquaculture's activities. And the idea here is to set a baseline for future permitting for these kinds of activities. Right now, there is no permitting for restorative aquaculture out there. There's only take permits, take as in removing permits for the seaweed. And this is something that we're going to run into, I believe, very shortly if we start to do demonstration projects and things like that. So after the risk assessment is done, which should be done in by the end of 2023, we would be, the idea then is to implement a project which sort of initiates these permitting guidelines. And we know that permitting is the bane of aquaculture, but we are going to start this process, and at least we'll have the risk assessment done to have something to stand on, if case people are, there's opposition to what we're trying to do. Next slide. Okay. The other idea was to develop a research plan to increase coordination and sharing. And those are big words, and we all try to do different parts of this, but in my mind, we are doing the current project. We are doing a biocomposite analysis of 5 indigenous seaweeds, which you can see the list, and to identify opportunities for value-added products other than food. The limu kohu, the top one, has already been being researched for its feed additive aspects to reduce cow methane. But this really gets back to that first box on the left of that, that slide I had that shows the different pieces. And economic sustainability is going to be another piece of this that has to come through. So out of these 5, hopefully we're going to get we'll get the reports at least for the what makes up the seaweeds, and seeing what we can do with them, whether it's a biofuel, bioplastic, biomaterial of some sort, or a nutraceutical pharmaceutical. So I don't believe anybody has done this, but this gets us going. I know there's many more indigenous seaweeds than the 5, but this will start us on this process. It's also building a model. We're working with University of Hawaii and the University of Washington, who has expertise in biomaterials research. So they're doing research for different seaweeds in the Pacific Northwest. And we are collaborating, or we're working with our seaweeds, so we're getting to have similar reports. So we're going to get like to like. And I believe that's going to help us move forward and also compare to our seaweeds with other seaweeds that are out there. Next slide. This should also be done in 2023. And oops, that's the wrong slide. Anyway, the next thing would be to do is keep pushing ahead with this. And I guess that is the right slide, to add these to a actual project. And hopefully we're going to do that on the near shore. So apologize, this was a cut and paste job. Next slide. Okay, so obviously we need to grow more support from key state and federal government departments and entities. Another current project we have, and this is another shout out to Hatch, is they are helping with the improving the aquaculture development, current aquaculture development strategic plan. And I believe they're going to be reaching out to certain individuals in this group and others to get their ideas about planning. So this was done, I'm not sure how it's going to fit with the Thrive symposium, but it's moving right now. And I believe that the Hatch people will be able to contact you. The real idea here is to bring in best-in-class global best-in-class restorative aquaculture plans and case studies to support our efforts here. What we're really looking for is we need the size of the projects and the expertise that's going on globally to come to Hawaii. We need to shape it to fit our local needs and our local, the the different cultural aspects of what we deal with here. But basically, everybody's trying to do the same thing. For example, there's a project in New York called the Billion Oyster Project, that they're trying to put 1 billion oysters in the Hudson River to clean it up. That as a topic, it also mirrors what Maria and the waterkeepers were doing in 2019 in Pearl Harbor. So there's other examples of restorative aquaculture that are way ahead of us in the global area, not just in the United States, but globally. And I think we could learn from them and move ahead more quickly. The later part of the slide deck, I'll have an example of something I can show you that Korea is doing, which is very interesting. In this case, we probably have to take people out to show them these different areas. So we're trying to figure out how to do a show and tell or plan a restorative aquaculture conference of some sort in Hawaii to bring these global leaders here if we can, to help educate and inform our people here. Next slide. Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. The idea of quantifying ecosystem services hasn't been fully realized yet. And because we know that there's a lot of conservation efforts that are going on around us, even in Hawaii, but how do you value that? Typically, the Department of Ag deals with, again, farm gate value, what we sell. But as we move into this new area, there's a massive value to carbon sequestration, to water quality improvement. But the question is, how do you put a number on that? So we'll be tracking this. That's something that Hawaii is going to be like original or unique. We're trying to do this, everybody's trying to do this globally. And what it comes down to is the ability to weaponize that valuation. And the idea of a blue carbon credit framework comes up very quickly. And in this case, it has, we were talking about carbon credits for forestry or for different things. DBED had done a little bit of work on that, but nobody's really looked at this blue carbon area. And that really falls into the aspects of what seaweed can do for the ecosystem and its ability to sequester carbon. So this is something that we're going to see if we can get some legislation around to at least begin the idea of this carbon credit framework. Again, globally, there's different examples. Some work well, some don't work well. Australia comes to mind as something that's a monster that's moving ahead. Other areas are beginning to look at this. So the ability to get financing will be able to take us away from necessarily just relying on, let's say, the legislature. We can use the legislature for seed funds, but a steady source of income is going to be key for moving or deploying large-scale restorative aquaculture efforts. Next slide. Okay, so I have found these guys, and it's a group called FIRA out of Korea. They're the Korean Fisheries Resource Agency. What's interesting about them is that they are willing to expand out of Korea. I had heard their talk at a conference in Australia, and it just coincidentally, the Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke, who is Korean, is going to Korea and looking for ag tech transfer opportunities. So she has this information. What's very interesting, and hopefully you guys will appreciate this too, is that they are doing restorative aquaculture for their indigenous species in Korea. The table shows the areas that they're hitting. These guys have experience doing this and a framework that allows them to move ahead. They are part of the government. They're part of the Ministry of Fisheries and Ocean and Fisheries. So they also understand the bureaucracy, et cetera. They work with the fishing industry in Korea and who helps them manage the areas, etc. So the idea here is we're working on an MOU to bring them here. And hopefully we can learn from them, and not necessarily we have to copy them, but we can learn on how they did it, how they set up their framework, how they go about testing the benthic or bathymetry, doing environmental assessments, and being able to deploy. So next slide is the winner slide, if you could hit that. This is a map of what they're doing, and it's crazy. They are around Korea. They've done, these are their projects, and I believe in parentheses it's hectares, but I'm not quite sure. But you can see, you can imagine the different kinds of substrates they face. Again, they're only using the indigenous, their indigenous species. They have, at least on their website, they show different methods of deploying the seaweed in the near shore. And again, to me, this shows that they're able, they're gone way past the theoretical or the demonstration. They are deploying, and they're keeping on deploying, because the government sees the advantage of doing this. So this, as you know, that we look for opportunities to partner and or leverage. This is an example of something like that I think that we can look at and try to find examples. It closely ties into the stuff that Hatch is looking at as best in class for global areas and what other peoples are doing. So let's see, I think that's the last slide. Next slide. Oh, and so here is, this is off their website. So this is just public knowledge. When we get, if hopefully we get it, but we will get the MOU, I think we'll get a lot more detail of their reports that, because they're monitoring the heck out of things. They call it marine reforestation. And just an example for the people on the call, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different methods depending on the area of deploying their seaweed. Again, our areas are different, right? How we would do things are has to be specific to what we deal with in our areas and who uses the water. This, of course, is all nearshore stuff for me, but it just shows that this group is has the ability to pick and choose what's the best way forward, and they are using these kinds of materials. I think Hawaii would be interesting to see how we can help leverage what's going on at the Hatch Accelerator to find other methods of environmentally sustainable and culturally sustainable ways to grow nearshore seaweed to support the reforestation of the coast. We know that there are both natural predators, herbivores, and also human predators that are going to be taking this stuff. So we have to be able to protect it to allow it to seed, or if we're going to use this term reforestation to set, right, and to grow and to somehow protect these areas. I'm not sure that we'll get into that kind of policy, but we could, if we can get some sort of movement. I think what we really have to do is to set an example and do a demonstration project in a selected area to show people that what can be done here in Hawaii, and then it will open the doors for more expansions. So just as a stepping back for a little bit, the near shore activities are really a community-based focus, and with the fish ponds integrated into the limuhui activities, and not necessarily to scale. I think there's going to be a lot of learning that we're going to do when we're trying to cultivate and propagate seaweeds in different environments. And at that time, it will give us a better idea of how and when and where we can grow seaweed at more to scale further out, which again ties us back into those value-added opportunities that we are looking at through the research with the University of Hawaii and University of Washington. I think that's it. Let's see. Next slide. Yep. So there's me and my friend Liz Aquina, who is our economic development specialist here. Here's our contact. And if you have questions or want to discuss anything, please let me know. I think that's it, Jane.
Thanks so much, Todd. And I know we have a lot of expertise on the call. What questions or comments or wonderings does anyone have? Feel free to jump in.
Or have I stunned you to silence? Oh, okay. So there's something from Maria. How do you plan to get DAR on board with this? Right. And I just talked with Maria a little earlier about permitting. That's a great question. That's permitting, of course, as we talked in that slide, is the bugaboo of most everything we do, right? And this is, I think the topic is a no-brainer, but the devil's in the details on how we move forward. So they will have to be part of this process of, for example, they are interested in they have a limu project. They called it limu, and it's basically a seaweed hatchery project that they're wanting to spin up. Those kinds of things can integrate them into what we're doing. I think we will be able to, there's a couple of NOAA grants that are out there that we're looking at setting up for planning purposes. And that will give us some funding to pull the groups together. I think we have to get past the theoretical and really get down to how do we deploy a project. And that's going to help sort out some of these issues. I no guarantee this is going to happen like tomorrow, because I think technically we can do it, but the people in the government know that things move very slowly. And so we have to kind of level set our expectations. But what we want to do is to keep pushing forward. If we have the right science and the ability to provide, and let's take this hatchery project that DAR wants to do, a clean seed stock. That's the beginning now with the foundation that we can deploy out to the near shore with the community efforts. And how we integrate the fish ponds is another question. How would we work with the limu huis in a strategic manner that gives them a clear mission on what tasks they need to do to support the nearshore activities, and also to give us not to control it, but to get consistent results, because that's really where we're going to see the progress. So I'm not sure if I answered that, but permitting is terrible, right? So we have to get everybody on board and get the right stakeholders. We have some support from the legislature. I see Representative Caruso's on board on the call, and we can see where this is going. The question is there any movement towards assigning a specific contact? Not yet. We are still moving from the concept phase forward. I think once nothing has to be in sequence, but the risk assessment will provide everybody kind of the foundation to stand on to say, hey, look, this isn't going to destroy the environment. It will actually enhance it. But that being said, we know our friends at DIR have a different mission. Our friends at NOAA also will be on an interesting case to see how they can support it or not. But initially, most people are very open to the idea of growing more seaweed. Do we need an EA or EIS? This is from Sharon Hurd. It depends. Right now, we're still kind of formatting what a demonstration would look like. And this gets back to permitting. So I think that question is to be continued or to be explored as we move ahead. We know that there's things like programmatic EAs and programmatic EISs. I'm not promoting that one way or the other, but how would we then push ahead? If we go back to that map that Korea has, how would we, if we could do something, and this is in the future, have a map like that for Hawaii, that would be tremendous. That we could say that we have different areas with different seaweeds appropriate for that area being deployed out there, and we can reforest things depending on the topography of what's going on with that area. So we are at the beginning phases of this thing, I think, and with the question of EA and EIS is that's going to be further down the line as we get into specific projects.
Thanks so much, Todd. Jim, did you have a question?
I was going to make a comment. I see great interest here in this subject with everybody participating, that at the aquaculture conference in September, we really have a focus on algae, and the lineup of speakers in the algae space, pretty impressive. Alexia Akbe from Symbrosia, Neil Sims from Ocean Era, Mike Lamont from Helii in Arizona, Rebecca White from Pebble Labs, and Heidi Kuhnle from Kuhnle Agrisciences. And then they're all going to sit together and do a 1-hour panel discussion. So algae's receiving a lot of attention at the conference, FYI.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jim. I think algae in general as a topic globally, for sure. And all those great minds can the general topic and the uses of algae as a value-added source of value-added products is immense. So the question is, how do we harness that and move it toward theoretical down to tactical for us? And I think it's great you guys are going on that, going to those kind of discussions. As you can see, we're pushing down into with the NOAA grant, where there's a planning one, and that I think will get us further along the line where we can get into these aspects of who does what, are EAs or EIS needed. I'm sure one or the other would be needed. How would we do that in sort of in the common space of nearshore activities? Because this is where the interesting thing comes through, where conservation isn't typically set in one spot where you get a permit per se. And again, this just gets us into some gray area immediately.
Thank you. Great questions and comments, everyone. Any other questions for Todd? Or comments? And, Todd, I just wondered, this sounds like a big endeavor, and how can industry work more closely with ADP on these initiatives?
Yeah, well, so again, when we get the results back from the different things, the risk assessment and the biocomposite analysis, I think we will be sharing that to everyone, and we can get your comments. Also with our friends at Hatch working on the strategic plan. Really the strategic plan, I wrote it, so it's barely bare bones, but they're going to add some meat and some fat on it and to shine it up. The idea would be to attract financing to our sector so we can have the wherewithal to start to deploy more things like this. And that really gets back into having a demonstration project that we can kick the tires on and see where it goes. So I appreciate if people, when they do get contacted, to respond to our Hatch team.
Yeah, we're working with Hatch on that for sure. We're going to collaborate. So thank you. But and there's a question from Nelha.
A little yellow hand.
Ray, are you over there in Nelha? Does someone have a question there? Oh, okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
they put something in the.
Yes,
in the
yes.
comment.
They're having trouble with their audio. So their comment is 60% of fisheries of Hatch Accelerator are seaweed or shellfish related. We believe there's great opportunity to drive more investment into this sector. Wonderful. Thanks for that comment. And any other final words before we sign off?
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward, if you have questions, please let me know. We will see you guys later.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. You'll be hearing from us soon. Aloha.